He's one of the artists like Miles Davis or like Bob Dylan who has a planet to be discovered. You never finish with Van, and the music just gives and gives and gives. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
And I show out the ferry boats and they'll get high.
His songs, his material, the stuff that he brings to the table, it's dynamite.
People often ask me, Bob Dylan or Van Morrison. I say, well, both. Bob Dylan for the head, Van Morrison for the heart. Nobody does the heart better than Van Morrison.
He's clearly, in my view, a very instinctual artist, and he is an artist. He is a supreme artist.
When Van Morrison emerged with them in the mid-1960s, few could have imagined the impact his following solo career would have. As a multi-instrumentalist, singer-songwriter and poet, Van Morrison put Ireland on the musical map with a series of groundbreaking records that would establish him as one of the most important singer-songwriters in the history of rock and roll. This is a review of Morrison's formative years as a solo artist and the albums that shaped both the man and his music. Van Morrison was born in 1945 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. As capital of Ulster, the city is composed of both an Irish and a British heritage, a schism that has often led to violent conflict between its different communities, but which has also gifted its citizens a unique and rich culture.
If Van Morrison had been born anywhere, he would have been an enormous star. What being born in Belfast meant, put in different influences. There's the Irish thing, there's the Civil War that he lived through. Although it didn't impact on him as it did on so many other people, something by osmosis, people get, infected by what they live around. So clearly all of those influences, went in there, they matured, they evolved, they changed, and they eventually came out into this artist that we see now.
It's a very oral culture. People love telling each other stories. I think there's more of a tradition, like if there's a party, you get up and do a piece, whether you play the piano, whether you sing, whether you recite a poem. I guess that's the kind of environment he grew up in. I mean, I think his mother could sing, not a professional singer, but she could sing. And she could dance, apparently, very well. So those sort of things were part of this sort of pre-television culture, if you like, where people entertained each other.
Van himself tells the story of the average Sunday afternoon at his house, his terrace street in Belfast, where you could throw open the windows, the doors, and you'd hear Lonnie Donegan coming from one room, you'd hear Ray Charles coming out of another doorway, you'd hear Miles Davis or John Coltrane coming from another. Just this vast amount of different influences that he soaked up.
Indeed, a particular feature of the young Morrison's home life was an early exposure to an eclectic range of musical styles that was untypical of the average post-war Irish household.
To his lasting benefit, his father was an avid collector of blues records and country blues records, and he had quite a formidable collection of 78s.
And Van Morrison didn't think of them as something exotic or cool as other people did. This was the folk music of the Morrison's house. This is just what you listened to.
Picked up a hammer in his little right hand. That's gonna be the death of me. Hammer be the death of me. Hammer be the death of me, Lord, Lord.
He was exposed to a lot of gospel, country, jazz. So he heard people like Leadbelly, Mahalia Jackson, Hank Williams.
When he's 3-year-old, he hears the voice of Mahalia Jackson coming through the ether. I mean, he's most autobiographical songwriter that there is, in terms of everything you need to know about Van's music is in his music. He's constantly telling that story.
Leadbelly was maybe the key. He once referred to him as my guru, but I think it was just that, Leadbelly was king of the blues, I suppose, as far as Morrison was concerned.
I heard Lead Belly records, and I thought, well, I'd like to play that and sing those songs, and that's really how I started. So I started to learn some of the riffs on guitar and Carter Family Records. So between Carter Family Records and Lead Belly, that's how I got into singing. That's all. I don't know if there was any sort of deliberate thought about it, but that's how I started.
Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. You tell him I'm gone. You tell him I'm gone.
Skiffle came along, and Lonnie Donegan in particular, doing these songs, many of which Van knew from the blues and folk originals by people like Lead Belly and Woody Guthrie. And Lonnie Donegan made them hip. Suddenly, skiffle was, the craze, the music that all young people, all of his generation, all of his school friends were listening to. So in a way, I think it vindicated the music that he was already listening to.
Well, the rock on the line is the road to ride. Yeah, the rock on the line is a mighty good road, and if you want to ride it, gotta ride it like a find it, get your ticket at the station on the rock on the line.
And that really probably gave him a distinctive edge. I mean, at that time, most people growing up would have been restricted to what they heard on the light program, and it was quite restrictive what you would have heard. But to his lasting benefit, he did actually almost got a tuition in the early blues from an early age. And although those influences weren't immediately evident in his work, because there wasn't a real outlet for it in Ireland or Northern Ireland or Southern Ireland at the time, it was something that was always there in his arsenal and could be used later on.
Like, I've been playing on my own. I mean, I started, playing, I'd listen to records. I mean, I'd listen to, like, the Carter Family, Dixie Darling, something like that. So I try to play this guitar style, and then I listen to this Lead Belly things, Good Morning Blues, and then I'd play that, and then there was a guy down the street that was heavily into Hank Williams, and sometimes we'd get together with him. I'd play with him, or, he'd just be singing in the back or something. And there was a lot of music going on in the street. It was like one of those streets where they had a lot of people that were into country and western was big. So then the skiffle thing was starting to happen then. So I formed a skiffle group. And then all of a sudden the whole thing just changed into sort of rock groups. Sort of skiffle was gone completely, and any sort of folk thing was like, that's what you did for enjoyment. But most all the gigs started to be just rock at this point. So mainly I just wanted to play, so in order to keep playing with other people, that was the only avenue. And I just really wanted to sort of develop. But it wasn't sort of like it was ultra exciting or anything. It was sort of more that was the only outlet for music then, really, to keep playing.
Morrison's enthusiasm for music continued throughout his teens, and he worked on developing his skill as a vocalist while also mastering the guitar, saxophone, and harmonica. Though he had been serving an apprenticeship in various skiffle combos and show bands, Morrison remained keen to pursue the rhythm and blues-influenced rock that was becoming popular in the early 1960s, an ambition that was realized in early '64 when the young artist founded a new R&B group, Them.
With Them, he got more into blues R&B, which was, that was a happening thing in Britain in the early 60s. It was the sort of same environment that the Stones grew out of, the Pretty Things, a lot of those English bands of the early 60s, and that's what he got into. So he was able to sing some of the songs of the people that he loved, the blues singers from America, but it was in this sort of modern context of an R&B band.
The arrival of Them made an